Number 7. Susan and William Shmyra. 65-year-old Susan Shmyra and her 64-year-old husband William left their home in Williamsburg, Virginia on May the 27th of 2018. They had plans for a cross-country vacation that would eventually bring them all the way to Palm Springs, California, a week later. However, what had started as an exciting summer getaway to the sun-soaked shores of one of California's most popular tourist destinations soon turned into an extensive search for the Shmyras, who had gone missing not long after their arrival in Palm Springs. The investigation into their whereabouts began on June the 13th after the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department received a tip that a vehicle had been parked near the Amboy Crater National Landmark in the Mojave Desert. Since June the 2nd, they soon discovered the car belonged to the Shmyras, and an aviation crew was called in to sweep the area in search of the missing couple. In the days that followed, the Sheriff's Department recruited the help of volunteer searchers to aid in the rescue efforts. A few days after the investigation had begun, the remains of an unidentified male were found. A coroner later confirmed it to be the body of William Shmyra, though his wife remained missing for nearly a year. In May of 2019, her body was finally found in the desert, east of the Amboy Crater. The search for Susan had taken so long because of the extreme daytime temperatures typical of the Mojave Desert. The area she was eventually found in occasionally hit highs of 160 degrees Fahrenheit. The autopsies confirmed the Shmyras had passed away due to heat exposure. Number 6. Erika Lloyd. 37-year-old Erika Lloyd, a single mother from California, went missing in a sparsely populated desert region near Joshua Tree National Park. She'd embarked on what she described as a pandemic road trip in the midsummer months of 2020. Her final destination was Joshua Tree, located some 500 miles southeast of her home in the city of Walnut Creek. The trip came as a surprise to her 12-year-old son and her roommates, whom Lloyd hadn't notified of her escapade until she was already walking out the door. She kept in contact with family members for the first couple of days, but the communication ceased on June the 16th. Lloyd had spoken to her mother on the phone that day, but the conversation was extremely peculiar, and the woman had begun to suspect something was wrong. Later that same day, Lloyd's car was found by local police, abandoned and vandalized, near a highway intersection in 29 Palms. She was never heard from again. For 8 months, the authorities combed through the vast California desert, hoping to find clues regarding her whereabouts. The search yielded no concrete results, but on January the 31st of 2021, hikers in Wonder Valley came upon what they believed to be human bones, roughly 10 miles east of 29 Palms. The remains were later identified as belonging to Erika Lloyd. The police investigation into her death found no evidence of foul play, though 2 individuals were arrested on June the 8th of 2021 for stealing her car and moving it to the area where it was eventually found by the police. The theft had reportedly thrown off the authorities' initial search efforts and prolonged the investigation. The most common theory regarding Erika's fatal road trip is that she'd suffered some sort of mental breakdown, stemming from the stress of shutting down her business and homeschooling her son. What exactly led to her death, however, remains a mystery. Number 5. The Apilly family. Sandeep and Shmyra Apilly of Santa Clarita, California, had taken their 2 children, 12-year-old Siddhant and Sachi, aged 9, on a family road trip up to Portland, Oregon, in late March of 2018. After spending a week there, they planned on meeting up with family in San Jose during the drive back home. The Apillys never showed up, however, and their relatives hadn't heard from them in 2 days. They reported the family missing to local police. Just a day earlier, witnesses had mentioned seeing a car descend into the Eel River off of Highway 101. There had been torrential downpours and the vehicle slipped off the road, falling down an embankment and landing in the water. The authorities soon realized the car belonged to the Apillys after 2 bodies were recovered from the scene of the crash. The victims were positively identified as Sandeep and Sachi, but Shmyra and Siddhant were still missing. The river's heavy currents had taken them 6 miles downstream, where their remains were eventually found. The site of the Apilly family's tragic accident was located just 30 miles from the area of the Eel River, where another deadly crash had occurred just 1 month prior. Number 4. Joseph Sivith and Amanda Caldwell. The families of 30-year-old Joseph Sivith and Amanda Caldwell, aged 29, were thrust into a tailspin of panic when the couple mysteriously went missing in January of 2019. Suspicions arose after Caldwell, a resident of Greensburg, Pennsylvania, had failed to show up to work on the morning of Thursday, the 3rd. She hadn't called off of her shift, and her cell phone was later found in her apartment. Her friends and co-workers claimed it was quite unusual for her to cut off communication and abandon her phone in such a manner. Caldwell's family quickly reported her missing. Sivith's whereabouts were also unknown at the time, as he had called out of work early Thursday morning. He too was reported missing by his family, and an investigation was then launched by Greensburg police. They had very little information to go on, but they were able to track the use of Caldwell's credit card to a small town close to Charleston, South Carolina, which was roughly 600 miles south of her home in Greensburg. It was speculated that Caldwell had been kidnapped by her boyfriend when Sivith's car was found parked behind her home, and the police found traces of blood on its steering wheel. Both families feared for the worst. Their concerns dissipated, however, when an interstate search for the couple resulted in them being found on a so-called spontaneous vacation in South Carolina. The blood on Sivith's steering wheel had apparently come from a cut on his hand. While everyone was relieved to find the couple alive and well, some called the Greensburg Police Department's actions into question, saying their search efforts were premature, especially considering the missing persons were 2 adults. Number 3. Harry Devitt. The dismembered body of 32-year-old New York native Harry Devitt was found on the side of the road in a small desert town in Mexico. In July of 2014, just 6 months prior, Devitt had been reported missing by his girlfriend. The last contact she'd had with him was in the form of a chilling text where Devitt said he was being escorted out of an area that was too dangerous for him to be in. He was riding his motorcycle from his home in the US all the way down to Brazil for the 2014 World Cup, but had gotten caught up in a section of Mexico fraught with gang violence and drug cartel activity. According to a Mexican newspaper called Excelsior, Devitt was kidnapped by a gang called Los Guerreros and was subsequently murdered. His severed body parts were put into multiple trash bags, and he was left next to the road alongside his bike and bags filled with marijuana and cocaine. It's unclear whether Los Guerreros had tried to sell Devitt these drugs, as such illegal transactions are known to occur between Mexican gangs and American tourists. Devitt had been documenting his journey on a website called A New Yorker Travels. He'd hoped to chronicle his intercontinental adventure from beginning to end, but the tragic conclusion to his story came far sooner than he could have anticipated. Today's topic was requested by Jade Nelson, Mitchell Martinez, Robert Velasquez, and Mikey F&A. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Ryan Boken and Molly Bock. Frantic friends and family of a couple from South Salt Lake, Utah, reported them missing to local police on April the 17th of 2019. Ryan Boken and Molly Bock, a pair of recently engaged 27-year-olds, had suddenly disappeared without a trace. The cars were not in the driveway, while their dog, a pit bull named Sadie, was gone as well. Concerned friends' attempts to contact the couple proved futile. Ryan's phone had been turned off, and Molly's was left behind at their home. Missing persons flyers were distributed all throughout the couple's neighborhood and other parts of South Salt Lake. The police eventually located Molly's car and towed it to the station as evidence. Just as the investigation was starting to produce results, the couple was found in Arizona. They had taken an unplanned road trip down south to visit family and hadn't told anyone about it. News of their safety spread through their local community, much to the relief of loved ones who'd been worried about their whereabouts. Number 1. The Trump family. In late August of 2016, the Trump family packed up their car and headed out into the scenic Australian countryside. To the outside world, it appeared to be a pleasant getaway, but as members of the Trump family started randomly appearing one by one in different locations around the country, the truth behind their sudden excursion began to reveal itself. As it turns out, the Trump parents, 51-year-old Mark and 53-year-old Jacoba, had grown increasingly unstable in the months and weeks leading up to their road trip. The couple ran a successful landscaping company in a little town just outside of Melbourne, and also operated a profitable red currant farm on their property. They had created a good life for themselves and their 3 children, Rihanna, Mitchell, and Ella, all of whom were in their 20s at the time of the family trip. The financial security that the Trumps had obtained through their various business ventures became a gateway for them to develop the delusion that someone was after them and their money. They truly believed that they were in imminent danger, so they fled. They left behind everything that might be used to track their location, including credit cards and cell phones. Their son Mitchell thought his parents were being irrational, but he went along with them to make sure they stayed safe. He smuggled his phone aboard the car, but once his parents discovered this, they forced him to toss it out the window. After traveling with them for roughly 500 miles, Mitchell asked to be dropped off in a town near Sydney. Later that same day, the 2 daughters, Rihanna and Ella, left their parents behind, stole a car, and drove to the nearest town. They reported their parents as missing to local authorities. Ella returned home shortly thereafter, and she became the first member of the Trump family to be located since their abrupt disappearance. Mitchell arrived home a day later. Rihanna was ultimately found by a truck driver who had discovered her stowed away in the back of his vehicle. She had suffered some sort of psychological trauma, as she had trouble telling the driver who she was or what had happened to her. At some point along the way, Mark and Jacoba had gotten separated themselves. Jacoba was spotted wandering aimlessly through a Victorian town, dazed and confused, while her husband wasn't found until a few days later. By this time, an interstate search for the missing Trumps had been set in motion, and Mark was eventually found lying on the side of the road near Wangaratta Airport. The case of the missing Trump family had become a national curiosity. Over the course of the week-long search, there were a number of theories and rumors in circulation as to why they had left their home in the first place. Some thought chemicals on their farm had severely altered their grasp on reality, prompting them to flee in a panic. The police proposed that the family had suffered some sort of sheer delusion. Nobody knows what really happened to cause such mental distress to an entire family. That's why it's been referred to as one of the most bizarre public meltdowns of modern times. But the Trumps themselves have since done their best to move on and return to their normal lives as if nothing had ever happened. Thanks for watching. Would you rather embark on a cross-country trip entirely on foot or have to do it in a car with your pesky in-laws? Let us know in the comments section below.